Thank you all for joining us tonight. We appreciate you joining us for more education. We're all getting educated here, passing on knowledge. And so tonight's topic, what I'm doing every week, is going to be going through the amendments to the Constitution. And tonight we're going against, reviewing the Third Amendment so people can comprehend what the Third Amendment means compared to what they think it means. Because everybody thinks, well, if we're under war or something like that, we're supposed to open our homes to the military. Hate to tell you, not true. So this is the one thing that we get convinced of things, and we're going to play a video here that I wanted to play because it's really an educational video. I watched this, and there's several other ones will get posted up later. And it really walks you through some of the congressional records, the truth compared to what we've been misguided and miseducated on. And so the whole point about it is this is proper education. So I have comments I plan on saying after the video is done. So why don't we go ahead and start the video, and then we'll go do that. But this video that we are doing, there's no commercial process. We're just passing on this education from the people that made this video and made the education possible for us to pass on. So this is just passing on somebody else's work and their education. So go ahead. We'll go ahead with the video.
The Third Amendment to the United States Constitution places restrictions on the quartering of soldiers in private homes without the owner's consent, forbidding the practice in peacetime. The amendment is a response to quartering acts passed by the British Parliament during the build-up to the American Revolutionary War, which had allowed the British Army to lodge soldiers in private residences. The Third Amendment was introduced in Congress in 1789 by James Madison as a part of the United States Bill of Rights, in response to anti-federalist objections to the new Constitution. Congress proposed the amendment to the states on September 28, 1789, and by December 15, 1791, the necessary three-quarters of the states had ratified it. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson announced the adoption of the amendment on March 1, 1792. The amendment is one of the least controversial of the Constitution and is rarely litigated, with the American Bar Association calling it the Ron Piglet of the U.S. Constitution. As of 2015, it had never been the primary basis of the Supreme Court decision. Text: No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house, without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Background: In 1765, the British Parliament enacted the first of the Quartering Acts, requiring the American colonies to pay the costs of British soldiers serving in the colonies, and requiring that if the local barracks provided insufficient space, that the colonists lodge the troops in alehouses, inns, and livery stables. After the Boston Tea Party, the Quartering Act of 1774 was enacted. One of the intolerable acts that pushed the colonies toward revolution, it authorized British troops to be housed wherever necessary, including in private homes. The quartering of troops was cited as one of the colonists' grievances in the United States Declaration of Independence. Adoption: After several years of comparatively weak government under the Articles of Confederation, a constitutional convention in Philadelphia proposed a new constitution on September 17, 1787, featuring a stronger chief executive and other changes. George Mason, a constitutional convention delegate and the drafter of Virginia's Declaration of Rights, proposed that a Bill of Rights listing and guaranteeing civil liberties be included. Other delegates including future Bill of Rights drafter James Madison disagreed, arguing that existing state guarantees of civil liberties were sufficient and that any attempt to enumerate individual rights risked the implication that other, unnamed rights were unprotected. After a brief debate, Mason's proposal was defeated by a unanimous vote of the state delegations. For the Constitution to be ratified, however, 9 of the 13 states were required to approve it in state conventions. Opposition to ratification was partly based on the Constitution's lack of adequate guarantees for civil liberties. Supporters of the Constitution in states where popular sentiment was against ratification successfully proposed that their state conventions both ratify the Constitution and call for the addition of a Bill of Rights. Several state conventions specifically proposed a provision against the quartering of troops in private homes. At the 1788 Virginia Ratifying Convention, Patrick Henry stated, "One of our first complaints, under the former government, was the quartering of troops among us. This was one of the principal reasons for dissolving the connection with Great Britain. Here we may have troops in time of peace. They may be billeted in any manner to tyrannize, oppress, and crush us." Equals proposal and ratification equals. In the first United States Congress, following the state legislature's request, James Madison proposed 20 constitutional amendments based on state bills of rights and English sources such as the Bill of Rights 1689. One of these was a prohibition against quartering troops in private homes. Several revisions to the future Third Amendment were proposed in Congress, which chiefly differed in the way in which peace and war were distinguished, and whether the executive or the legislature would have the authority to authorize quartering. However, the amendment ultimately passed Congress almost unchanged and by unanimous vote. Congress reduced Madison's proposed 20 amendments to 12, and these were submitted to the states for ratification on September 25, 1789. By the time the Bill of Rights was submitted to the states for ratification, opinions had shifted in both parties. Many Federalists, who had previously opposed a Bill of Rights, now supported the bill as a means of silencing the Anti-Federalists' most effective criticism. Many Anti-Federalists, in contrast, now opposed it, realizing that the bill's adoption would greatly lessen the chances of a second constitutional convention, which they desired. Anti-Federalists such as Richard Henry Lee also argued that the bill left the most objectionable portions of the Constitution, such as the federal judiciary and direct taxation, intact. On November 20, 1789, New Jersey ratified 11 of the 12 amendments, rejecting Article 2, which regulated congressional pay raises. On December 19 and 22, respectively, Maryland and North Carolina ratified all 12 amendments. On January 19, 25, and 28, 1790, respectively, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Delaware ratified the bill, though New Hampshire rejected the amendment on congressional pay raises, and Delaware rejected Article I, which regulated the size of the House. This brought the total of ratifying states to 6 of the required 10, but the process stalled in other states. Connecticut and Georgia found a Bill of Rights unnecessary and so refused to ratify, while Massachusetts ratified most of the amendments, but failed to send official notice to the Secretary of State that it had done so. In February through June of 1790, New York, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island ratified 11 of the amendments, though all 3 rejected the amendment on congressional pay raises. Virginia initially postponed its debate, but after Vermont was admitted to the Union in 1791, the total number of states needed for ratification rose to 11. Vermont ratified on November 3, 1791, approving all 12 amendments, and Virginia finally followed on December 15, 1791. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson announced the adoption of the 10 successfully ratified amendments on March 1, 1792. Judicial interpretation. The Third Amendment is among the least cited sections of the U.S. Constitution. In the words of Encyclopedia Britannica, as the history of the country progressed with little conflict on American soil, the amendment has had little occasion to be invoked. As of 2015, no major Supreme Court decision has used the amendment as its primary basis. The Third Amendment has been invoked in a few instances as helping establish an implicit right to privacy in the Constitution. Justice William O. Douglas used the amendment along with others in the Bill of Rights as a partial basis for the majority decision in Griswold v. Connecticut, which cited the Third Amendment as implying a belief that an individual's home should be free from agents of the state. In one of the 7 opinions in Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company v. Sawyer, Justice Robert H. Jackson cited the Third Amendment as providing evidence of the framers' intent to constrain executive power even during wartime. Military powers of the Commander-in-Chief were not to supersede representative government of internal affairs seems obvious from the Constitution and from elementary American history. Time out of mind, and even now in many parts of the world, a military commander can seize private housing to shelter his troops. Not so, however, in the United States. for the Third Amendment says, Ben in wartime, his seizure of needed military housing must be authorized by Congress. One of the few times a federal court was asked to invalidate a law or action on Third Amendment grounds was in Engblom v. Carey. In 1979, prison officials in New York organized a strike. They were evicted from their prison facility residences, which were reassigned to members of the National Guard who had temporarily taken their place as prison guards. The United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the term owner in the Third Amendment includes tenants. National Guard troops count as soldiers for the purposes of the Third Amendment, and that the Third Amendment is incorporated by virtue of the 14th Amendment. The case was remanded to the District Court, which dismissed the case on the grounds that state officials could not have been aware of this interpretation. In the most recent Third Amendment decision handed down by a federal court, on February 2, 2015, the United States District Court for the District of Nevada held in Mitchell v. City of Henderson that the Third Amendment does not apply to intrusions by municipal police officers since they are not soldiers. In an earlier case, United States v. Valenzuela, the defendant asked that a federal rent control law be struck down because it was the incubator and hatchery of swarms of bureaucrats to be quartered as stormtroopers upon the people in violation of Amendment 3 of the United States Constitution. The court declined his request. Later, in Jones v. United States Secretary of Defense, Army reservists unsuccessfully cited the Third Amendment as justification for refusing to march in a parade. Similar arguments in a variety of contexts have been denied in other cases. See also, List of amendments to the United States Constitution, Quartering Acts, Dragonades. References, Notes. Citations. Bibliography, Alderman, Ellen and Caroline Kennedy. In Our Defense. Avon. Amma, Ackle Reed. The Bill of Rights. Yale University Press. Beeman, Richard. Plain, Honest Men, The Making of the American Constitution. Random House. Bell, Tom W. The Third Amendment, Forgotten but Not Gone. William and Mary Bill of Rights Journal 2.1 pages 117-150. Labrinsky, Richard E. James Madison and the Struggle for the Bill of Rights. Oxford University Press. Wood, Gordon S. Empire of Liberty, A History of the Early Republic, 1789-1815. Oxford University Press. External links, National Constitution Center, Amendment 3, CRS Annotated Constitution, Third Amendment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So this way, we're getting things more clarified with the amendments of what they are. And then the other point, too, is today, most of your police are military trained, and most of them are former military. So that brings another question to the table. And then the other major point, too, is that housing, you don't know if you're housing a domestic terrorist agency from another agency or something like that. So that definitely falls under your other constitutional rights to protect your home. It could be portrayed that the 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act could be imposed. See, I mean, they have a lot of things in the structure that people need to pay attention to, the Constitution, statute codes, and administrative rules. And as this brings to attention to everybody, where it started from, England, Britain, telling us that we didn't have a right to our homes or families. They can come in, and you don't know what these people are going to do when they come in your home. So you don't have to allow them in your home. And see, that's up to you. See, this is a decision that the landowner has to make. And landowner could be female or male, doesn't matter. So when we look at the Third Amendment of what it's supposed to be doing, and we're supposed to be secure in our homes, and they're saying that, well, we can do whatever we want, but then you've had the Supreme Court come up and say, well, maybe, and then no, and then maybe. So this is the one thing that it comes to your jurisdiction of your belief on the foundation which you believe under the Constitution, not of administrative rules, because the Constitution and the treaties are the supreme law of this land. And that's quoted even by the Congress and everybody else. So we already know that. So when we get into this about your rights, is knowing your rights, not privileges, and knowing who you could allow in your home. It's like with the police department. You don't have to allow them in your home if they don't have a warrant. And I'm waiting for the rest of the states to go like Illinois, because Illinois passed a law that if police officers are in your home, you have a right to defend yourself because you don't know what the cop's going to do. Illinois state made that very clear on a couple cases that happened with police that went into people's homes, and and when people get accidentally shot, you don't know what's going to happen. So we have to defend ourselves. Anyhow, we got another real short video. We'll get that one played, and then I'll talk, and then we'll get open for commentaries.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History as we continue with the Constitution for Dummies series. Bada boom, bada bing. We're on Amendment 3, short and sweet and right to the point. So giddy up, yay for learning. I'm raising the roof, and I'm ready to do the teaching if you're ready to do the learning. Alright, so let's say the words first. This is a short and sweet one, guys.
No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
So, there you go. No quartering of soldiers. No soldiers up in my house. Get out of my house, soldier man. This is, of all the amendments, probably the least enforced one, because we really don't have a problem. It's not a challenge. We're not really worrying about the Marines coming, taking the third spot on the sofa. This goes back historically to colonial times. Around 1765, the first Quartering Act was passed out of the British Parliament, basically stating that if the British had run out of room in terms of barracks, that they could take a spot at the inn. At the inn, but I had a reservation, but it doesn't matter, because the British got your spot, bro. And then after the Boston Tea Party, I believe 1774, the Coercive Acts, there's the Quartering Act of 1774, where the British are going to up the ante and say that not only can they take a room at the inn, but they can take a room in your room. They can take your house. They could basically take over your house if there was some type of upheaval, some type of situation where the British needed some space. They're going to be up all in your space. Get out of my space. No quartering of soldiers. And throughout American history, we haven't really had a need for this to be selectively incorporated. It's just been followed kind of letter to the law. What's interesting about it, I think, is the second part, that even in times of war, we're not going to allow anybody to take over your home unless Congress passes a law. So there's even kind of a limitation on it in war, and in many cases, many of our freedoms and our habeas corpus rights can be dissipated during a wartime environment. So there you go, no quartering of soldiers. As I rack my brain, I think it's only been mentioned like once in Supreme Court history. I'm going like Griswold versus Connecticut. I think that O'Douglas might have thrown it in when they were talking about privacy of our homes from state officials when it came to contraceptives. But other than that, there's no talking about it. Three's a crowd, baby. The Third Amendment to the Constitution, no quartering of soldiers. Check out the links below. Hell, why don't you just click right there? You click right there, you go to the Constitution for Dummies series, and then you can line them up and knock them down one after the other. And certainly if you haven't subscribed, subscribe and check out the description below, and live a long, happy life. And where attention goes, energy flows. I don't even know what the hell this means. We'll see you later, guys.
Okay, thank you. And this is the point that we're bringing out to people. You have to know your rights of your land, your soil. And I mean your soil. And you have to know what your elected and public employees can do and can't do. And that is your responsibility, not the district attorney's, not a judge, not any other elected and public servants. This is your responsibility to protect your home and your bloodline. And so when we comprehend all this stuff, and it's that short, it's like the Fourth Amendment and all the other amendments, we'll get through that. And we'll be going through what's been ratified and what's been legally passed. Because that's the one thing that people have got to realize when it's done administratively. And see, that's the one thing that people don't comprehend. People say, well, the British still owns you. Well, yes, you got credit cards and debt and all that because you're borrowing for the British banks. Your local banks ain't local banks. Do the research. Prove it. I've done it, seen it, know how they can operate. I know how they can close accounts down, take your money, and do all this stuff. You know, and then you try to fight them, and it's an interesting battle, still doing it. So that is the one thing that when you think about it, your home is your home, and it's your rights. And you don't know when you allow these men or women around your property what their intent is. And also, too, who could know? They could try to impose your trading with the enemy. See, there's a lot of things that your system can do to you on these things. So they open up these doors so that way they can open up doors for themselves so that way they can manipulate and misuse your rights, misuse your beliefs and comprehension. So anyhow, why don't we go ahead and open the floor, and we'll go from there and see what people got to say or if anybody's got any thoughts.
All participants are unmuted.
So the floor is open. Anybody got something to thought or say on this issue? No, I guess not today. I guess it was pretty cut and dry and clear. Yeah. So, well, if we don't have any comments today in that structure, I guess then we're going to make it an early show tonight. We got the major education out there. People got it, and that's the point. Learn your Constitution. Comprehend your statute codes and administrative rules, what applies to you, what does not apply to you. And learn that the structure of being lawful versus a citizen, a legal immigrant. So with that, seeing if nobody wants to comment, I guess we'll call it an evening tonight. So with that, may the Great Spirit look over you, Mother to feed you, take care of you, bring you life, and the Creator watch over all of us and make sure that we all live. Right, and the other point with the videos that we bring together, these videos are on YouTube, so we're not going on copyright infringements or anything like that. We're just passing their education along to you. Right.